Let's give a warm welcome to our newest member of the Liberal Party, Michael Ma, the MP for Union Martinville.
Wow, such a big welcome. Thank you. All I want to say is Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a great 2026 coming to all of you.
2025 was not supposed to go like this for Pierre Poilievre and the federal Conservatives.
Change is on the way.
He started 2025 up 25 points in public opinion polls, but then lost the federal election, lost his seat in the riding of Carleton, and now has lost 3 MPs from his caucus. 1 who announced plans to resign, 2 who defected to the Liberals. The most recent on Thursday night, just in time for the Liberal Christmas party and just after the Conservative Christmas party.
We did not create this situation where Conservatives are frustrated with the direction that their leadership has ordered them to take. So some of them, smart people, upstanding people, are going to make it known that they are dissatisfied with that. You've seen 2 to date. There are lots of Conservatives, I do assure you, who do not like this Poilievre approach. And they're there, and I'd leave it to you to go find them.
So all of this in a week where the Conservatives hope to show divisions in the Liberal ranks with an opposition motion on pipelines. It's a good thing our party insiders are here to check the pulse of Canadian politics. We've got Greg McEachern. He, of course, is a former Liberal ministerial advisor. Fred Delory is a former Conservative campaign manager. And Melanie Richer is a former communications director for the NDP. Happy Friday. Good to see you all. Greg, how was the Liberal Christmas party? Did you get anything nice for the holidays?
It was a very solemn. I think it's important to be. Are you kidding? It was so much fun. We were all at the reception before the party, and it is great to be in Ottawa when, well, we experienced a fair amount of breaking news last year sitting here, but when you see it spread across the reception, people are pointing to phones. I'll be honest, maybe a lot of people weren't familiar with this MP, say around 5:30, but by about 7 o'clock, everyone certainly was. Then it was the question of whether or not he was going to show up, which is great politics, great theater, and he did. So the room was very, very upbeat. You know, David, I assumed this week we would be talking about the MOU, and I was prepared to say, you know, it wasn't a great week for the Conservatives based on that, around language, and I think it actually solidified the Liberal caucus because those who might have had doubts when they saw the Conservatives were leaving parts of the language in the MOU out, it's a signal to them that, okay, the Conservatives aren't prepared to even go there, right. So I am in the right party. But this is huge. And it does raise a lot of questions about the Conservative Leadership Convention. And I checked today, and they've delayed their early bird discount pricing for another 2 weeks, which doesn't suggest to me that a lot of people are really excited about heading to this convention.
Well, Fred, I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of early bird pricing.
That's a biannual tradition. You always extend by 2 weeks, so I wouldn't read too much into that.
Okay, all right.
Not saying
exciting time.
Sales are going great, but I wouldn't read anything into that.
I do want to talk a little bit about the MOU later in the conversation, but Fred, the Conservatives I talked to thought it was all over.
Right.
You know, and certainly a lot of Liberals thought it was all over until it wasn't. And, you know, neighboring riding, Michael Ma, Tim Hodgson, apparently their wives are friends.
Right.
You know, don't know if that's how this particular thing's happened, but he met with the Prime Minister yesterday afternoon and then was on stage with him at the party. I mean, they're 1 seat away.
Yeah.
How worried are the Conservatives that one more is going to go?
Well, if I hear Sharon Musgrave's coming out of retirement to set up the CBC election decision desk,
we're still waiting to make a call.
CBC was the last to make a call last time, and maybe you made it too early. Look, this came out of nowhere. This was weird. It was the House rose. The session was done. People were at parties and celebrating the break that was coming. So this came out of left field. D'Entremont, the rumors were going on then. They were kind of hot. I was still surprised when Chris D'Entremont crossed. Didn't think it would happen, and his name was floated. I think Greg mentioned weeks before saying he heard a rumor, and I was like, nah, D'Entremont, he wouldn't do this, and he did it. And then Michael Ma out of nowhere. So internally, as a Conservative, we've got to wonder who else is talking, what is going on there, because this can come at any time from anyone. We do have the Leadership Convention in about 6 weeks' time. Will there be more names then? Are the Liberals that sophisticated to be mapping out right around the convention 2 people or 3 people crossing, if they can get to that?
Mel, I talked to a Conservative MP and a couple of them in the last 24 hours or so. Their fear and they're hearing and fearing, and there's just paranoia right now because they didn't see this coming, and here we are, is that people do cross, but after the convention. Let the review go, let Mr. Poilievre come through it, and then deliver the majority government. Because that would, either way, if they get to 172, it changes the whole political dynamic of Parliament and the country.
Yeah, it totally changes it and doesn't inspire much confidence in Pierre Poilievre either way. I think what's funny about the conversation that was happening, yesterday, today, but also the conversation in the last few weeks when we saw Chris Entremont and we saw Matt Genereux, is that since the election, the leadership of Pierre Poilievre and his team around him don't seem to have gotten that the way that they've been operating isn't working. And when they were winning, treating people a certain way is one thing. But when you're not winning, continuing to treat people a certain way and not learning your lessons from the election and continuing to behave the way that you have since the election seems to have not inspired a lot of, not necessarily trust, but happiness in that Conservative caucus. And that's kind of what you've been hearing. It was interesting to hear one of the MPs talk about how, you want the environment to be positive and whatnot. And everything that we've heard from that leadership team is that it's the opposite, that it's quite toxic. And we saw that, with Matt Genereux. So it's not surprising that at the very last minute, this MP would have not told anybody, would have pretended like everything was okay before crossing over, because why would you? You hear the rumors about how the Conservative caucus treated Matt Genereux, and I probably would not have done anything differently. Now, do we, as partisans, swear a blood oath to our parties? Yeah, we kind of do. So for us, I'm sure, the Conservatives are quite upset that this happened, and I would also be quite upset if that had happened, if it was one of my MPs. But Canadians watching at home aren't partisan like that. They don't necessarily think, this MP should stay that MP for the rest of their lives. They want you to collaborate, they want you to act in their best interest, and they want you to get things done. So the message that we saw from that MP for his reasons for joining the Liberal Party are exactly that. So for regular folks at home who don't consider themselves partisan like the three of us do, I think it's, head nodding, makes sense, get stuff done.
A class of 2025 MP, in a battleground riding, who crossed. So this is interesting. But Greg, when David Emerson joined the Conservatives, Liberals were outraged. When Leona Alleslev joined, they were outraged. Flip the same way here. If Mark Carney gets a majority through defections, not elections, do you think that's going to be okay with Canadians? That's a different way to get it.
Yeah, I'm going to push back a little bit, though, because David Emerson crossed the floor to go into Harper's cabinet.
Sure.
And Harper had been very critical of Belinda Stronach, who I worked for as a Liberal MP, so I don't want to be a hypocrite in terms of my views on floor crossing. But David Emerson, that was pretty stunning when he showed up at Rideau Hall.
Sure.
Leona, we still need to attack floor crossers.
I don't want to litigate the Emerson thing, but the point is people don't like it when people leave.
Leona Alleslev, there is a big difference because Justin Trudeau wished her well. Pierre Poilievre and his gang have not said very nice things about these people, including ones that didn't get to cross the floor.
Right.
So I'm case by case. Sometimes you get the math.
But it's not about the floor crossing. Getting a majority without winning it at the ballot box. That's what I'm curious about. I don't know if that is. I don't think it has ever happened in history.
But flip it. If you lose your majority through floor crossing, this is our system. This is the parliamentary.
I get that, and it's not a pox on floor crossing. People leaving government is a different thing, but getting a majority government without doing it at the ballot box. I mean, do you think that becomes something that's going to be tough to sell?
I think that's a nuance that's going to be lost on a lot of people. I think right now people, and this is what people are trying to say to Pierre Poilievre, who does not seem to be prone to introspection, as Fred has pointed out. They've not really done a deep dive on why they lost the election. And look, I see a lot of similarities, believe it or not, between Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre in terms of their treatment of caucus. And in 2019, when Justin Trudeau got into trouble because of Jody Wilson-Raybould. That is when Justin Trudeau started doing caucus outreach, but he did not maintain it. And we all know what we were talking about here last fall. Pierre Poilievre is in the same situation. He doesn't seem to want to do that. I thought it was very interesting, though, in your interview with Adam Chambers, he mentioned that MPs are allowed to criticize or something along those lines. Fred, you and I were standing there watching it out in the hallway. That seemed like a surprise to me. That is not the vibe we were getting when people were showing up in Chris D'Entremont's office and some of the things were said. I don't blame Michael Maw for not telling anyone, and it's kind of a surprising because this town can't keep a secret. But this was a big secret. Yeah. But, you know, when I hear about the same thing that you were discussing, Mel, about the things that were alleged or being talked about, no wonder this person didn't give a hint that he was prepared to do this until it happened.
Right, and well, and maybe, Fred, the Liberals learned how to tighten things down a little bit after you know, Politico reports defections on budget day, right?
Technically, he was a conservative when he did that interview.
No, I understand, but you know, he was negotiating. Like, let's be honest. But what do you make of this issue of going to a majority through the defection process rather than the election? I know that's the system. I know people are elected to exercise their judgment and move across, but you know, people tend to vote for a party or leader more so than an MP. But still, it's legitimate. But will people accept it?
I think they will. I don't think people will be thinking about it. I don't think they'll be thinking about there's this big, we didn't vote for that. If Carney manages to do that, and if he manages this by just pulling Conservatives to him, if there's no NDP or Bloc that cross, then I think that's more of a black mark on the Conservatives and what happened there. How did we allow that to happen? How did we allow this situation?
How did you allow Mark Carney to bring it home?
Right, to bring it.
He's on a Christmas party, defection high. Last year at Christmas party, Christopher Freeland was getting all the pictures taken after she took down the room. Anyway,
who knows where we'll be a year from now, right? Maybe Don Davies will be Prime Minister. I don't know.
Does Don Davies have a Christmas party? Where is Michael Maw? Sorry.
No, so was it in a small little cafe?
All right.
So no, I don't think Canadians will be like overly upset if there's a majority government that comes out of this. It'll be a bit confusing. The stability that majority gets, people like that too, I think. But when people were voting in the ballot boxes, I really don't think people think majority, minority. You're voting for the leader in the party. So I do think in West Nova and Markham Unionville, there will be constituents who will be upset that they didn't vote for this.
Acadianapolis.
Sorry, the riding changes.
Got to correct the Nova Scotian on a Nova Scotian. Look at this. This is the Newfoundlander Duncan on the Nova Scotian.
It was West Nova, to be
clear. It was. Yeah,
no wonder he crossed the floor. Insults like this.
So Mel, I wonder about this though. That this year for Pierre Poilievre, he was going to win. Then he didn't, and then he didn't again, and now he's losing MPs, and he's going into this review in Calgary at the end of January. If the odometer ticks over to 172, he's going to sit in opposition potentially for 3 more years as Mark Carney, implements his agenda. Where does that leave his leadership? Where is the tenability of his leadership? Because from last Christmas party, caucus Christmas parties to now, he's in a totally different universe.
Completely different universe. The complete opposite of where we were last Christmas. And what's interesting, of course, about the Conservatives is...
Hang on, has Mel's mic died there, gang? Not on. Their mic is not on. Okay, this mic keeps failing. We have a technical problem. So, gang, can we have a look at this? I'll throw it back to Fred, and then I'll come back to Mel while we get her mic going. Fred, what do you make of where he is on his leadership, with a month or so to go?
I think he's going to be fine at the convention. I don't think there'll be any concern there. The party delegates that will be going to Calgary in end of January are going to be largely his supporters. Those are the ones that are seem to be signing up to go. So I don't think there's going to be an impact there. I think there's caucus at the same time too, despite losing a few members. The vast majority of caucus is solidly behind him. There are some, there's up to 15, 20 members that are frustrated, but that's a 140 member caucus. Right. It's a lot of members who don't seem to be frustrated and seem to be okay with the approach and where things are going. I think ultimately the only person that will decide whether Pierre Poilievre is leading the party into the next election is Pierre Poilievre. He's got to look at the numbers. He's got to figure it out. Is there a path? Is there something? Can I do this? To your point about, if it's a majority government and there's 3 years, I mean, he's going to have 3 years to come up with some really catchy slogans.
Oh, gosh.
Right? And he's going to, I'm kidding. Look, that's going to be tough. Being leader of the opposition is a very tough job, and 3 years, that's a grind. It's particularly when he was that close to winning the largest majority in history.
Yeah, get in line for 2029 is where we'll end up. Mel, I think you're back after Greg sneakily turned it off, is what we think happened. He
didn't want me to talk.
Your thoughts on where Mr. Poilievre is in his leadership right now?
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to say, obviously Fred is probably better placed to say how folks are going to support him or not, but the one thing that I would say is what's interesting about the Conservatives is they've adopted the Michael Chong's PMB, so they the Reform Act. So they get to, if Caucus, decides he may pass the vote, his leadership vote in January, but Caucus decides a year down the road that actually no, this guy's not giving Mark Carney a run for his money. He's not improving. He's not changing his message. They actually get to decide whether or not they want to keep him. So. Obviously, first test coming in January, but it will be interesting to see if he's still unable to change the needle. Mark Carney gets a majority. If I was a caucus member, I'd start asking questions.
So just to stick with you, Mel, I had a caucus member and some staffers and other, conservatives say to me, there might be enough conservatives in the caucus to get a vote, but not to win a vote under the Chong Act, at least as the lay of the land is right now. I don't think the conversation is so much is his tenability as the leader it's his viability as a candidate for prime minister.
Absolutely.
This is the challenge. He's in a totally different situation than he was a year ago.
Absolutely, but you've got two tests, right? First test is with your people. So how are you talking to your people? And then the second test, obviously, is with Canadians. And we have not seen him find what it is that he wants to say to regular folks. We have not seen him gain his footing, find an issue that he can talk about credibly to people since the election. Obviously, he had the monopoly on the message. He had the monopoly on what we were talking about on a day-to-day basis in the lead up to the last election, but he has been unable to figure that out, I would say, probably since last January. So what does he do when he does win this vote, if he does win it? I mean, I think that's up to Mr. Poilievre, but we haven't seen him figure it out, I guess, in the last month. So it's hard to see how he can going forward, because he's definitely not talking to the people in my universe.
So, Greg, this is where I want to come back to the MOU issue from this week, right? So this was the sort of thing that the Conservatives thought they had a good tactical play here that will lift some words loosely from the MOU and put them back to the Liberals and force them to vote on it. And we're going to magnify the divisions that exist within the caucus. A year ago, 18 months ago, I could see the PM, and Team Trudeau litigating the finer points of that. But what happened this week was they came out and said, this is a stunt, this is a joke. From people interested in stunts and jokes, we got a job to do, screw this, we're voting no. They're not engaging with it. He's not getting traction with it. And the Prime Minister never mentions him. So the ability to harness the political energy and drive the narrative has just evaporated to the point that they're dismissing him rather than engaging.
Yeah, I think it's a Diefenbaker quote, big game hunter doesn't follow rabbit tracks. And so they didn't fall for the trap. And I know that, if you're explaining you're losing is overused, but by doing this, that meant that the Conservatives had to explain the MOU and what the point of it was. And how do you tell Canadians you're simultaneously interested in affordability issues, but you're trying to do this debating club vibe, model parliament feeling thing? And then the other aspect of it, who is the partner in the MOU? The very conservative Premier of Alberta. Where is the riding that Pierre Poilievre represents? Alberta. Where is the base of your support? Alberta. So how do you square that circle? That you're picking apart this MOU for the sake, I guess, of politics and trying to win in question period? I mean, I remember the, Tom Mulcair, I did good in question period award. I don't, it didn't do him very much good either. A year ago, the Conservatives were talking about, I think, staying in the House over Christmas. There's all these stunts. And I think, Fred, I saw Robin Urbach use your line in her column about, I think you've said Conservatives don't do cute well. And she, referenced
I just repeated that line. I didn't.
Okay, but I agree, and I agree with that. And it does feel cute at a very serious time.
Yeah, look, Lauren Gunter wrote a column in the Edmonton Journal. Yeah, and when you're losing the post-media papers in Alberta, it tells you something. But in terms of driving the conversation, Fred, I mean, Doug Ford is a big player as an elected Conservative. Tim Houston makes punches above his weight as Premier of Nova Scotia. Daniel Smith has become very central to a lot of the big national conversations, and Pierre Poilievre is not in the mix like he was a year ago. And you saw some data from Angus Reid this week that outside of the hardcore Conservatives, there's a drifting off of support. I mean, what kind of a number do you think he needs to get in January?
That's a good question, because the negatives he's getting, if you look at it, each month he's dropped 3 or 4 points. His approvals have. And this infighting and losing an MP and all of, for the next number of weeks, there's going to be columns and opinion pieces written about should he go or should he stay. And that is just going to continue to erode his approval numbers with Canadians. So it's going to drive it down further.
But maybe not with the core, right? That's going to go to Calgary.
At the convention. Look, the way I'm hearing, they're polling the delegates, and mid-90s is where they see it right now, which is incredibly high. North Korea type numbers. So I don't know where they're going to land.
What an interesting comparison.
If they're lower than that, I will be very surprised. If he's in the 80s or if he's in the 70s, I would be very, very surprised.
Yeah.
And what that means, I mean, you only need 50% plus one. Joe Clark had
66.3, I believe, in 1983.
So if he's in the 70s, he's technically safe, but.
Politically he wouldn't be, especially given what we expect the makeup of that delegate.
If Caucus supports him, and if he wins and again, I think he's going to get an incredibly high number.
I think so. I think you're probably right.
I don't think he's going to be in that zone at all.
Yeah, it's especially with that early bird discount extended for 2 weeks, as Greg was saying,
which we do every convention.
I know. I'm teasing you, but look, here's something I want to show because. I find this interesting. My colleague Kate McKenna, she interviewed Ontario Conservative MP Jamil Jivani for a year-end interview. And she asked him about this floor crossing and how it affected the Conservatives and the Christmas party and the Secret Santa at the Christmas party. Take a listen to this.
I and many other Conservatives really did help him get elected. And so it sucks when there's like kind of a dishonorable aspect to this. Like the guy went from doing the conga line at our Conservative Christmas party to literally 24 hours later leaving our party. Also leaving me without a Secret Santa gift, by the way, just as a note. But so it's frustrating, it's sad. I think it undermines a healthy culture here because you want to believe you can trust people, and this makes you second guess that.
Okay, so Mel, this is what I wonder about. First of all, Jamil Jivani was supposed to get a Secret Santa gift from Michael Ma, and I guess maybe Mark Carney got it instead. I don't know. But the undermines trust. Like, this is the thing. I go back to every Conservative we spoke with on the record thought it was over, that they'd stabilized, and now that they're back in this again. And even Conservatives saying we think there could be more. We're not sure. I mean, how does a caucus function with stuff like that going on?
He made mention of healthy culture. I don't know that the current iteration of Conservatives are known to have a healthy culture. So again, I go back to I can appreciate why it undermines trust and why you would be looking at your colleagues and thinking, are they having conversations with the Liberals? But again, that is a failure of leadership. I can't remember who I saw say this on LinkedIn this week, but it was something to the effect of people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses. And I think that in this case is true. Again, we saw Pierre Poilievre treat everybody, or the team around him treat everybody like they could do whatever they wanted because they were about to walk into the Prime Minister's office, and that doesn't seem to have changed. But when you treat people like that when you're winning, it's one thing. When you're treating people like that when you're losing, it's a completely other. So I can appreciate why, it would undermine trust and it would make things difficult in that caucus. And probably they need to do a little bit of soul searching to figure out where they go from here and how they move forward. But again, it kind of starts and ends with the guy in charge. And if you're not getting good leadership from, the leader of your party, I don't blame, or I'm not surprised that this kind of stuff is happening.
Look, they've changed a bunch of things. Steve Athouse, who's going to run the campaign, is going to take a very different approach and is a very different kind of guy than we saw with Jenny Byrne. Katie Merrifield, who's the new communications director. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is going to be on with Rosemary Barton live on Sunday morning, right? Like, there are changes happening there. But, I wonder, Greg, and I want to use you to set up where I want to go with Fred. Jamil Jivani there, he is doing this campus tour, where he's building a database. I don't know if he's building that database for the Conservative Party of Canada or if he's building that database for Jamil Jivani. When Aaron O'Toole got in trouble with his caucus after he lost the election, there was a Pierre Poilievre as the obvious person. I don't know if that person is there now. Could that be Jamil Jivani? Is that where maybe his ambitions lie? He doesn't have a critic portfolio, is not in the shadow caucus, and he's doing this side campaign and year-end interviews with the CBC. I mean, where do you think it is in terms of the caucus mix there?
I'm shocked that there's gambling in this casino, would be my reaction to that. And what's interesting about what he's doing there is it's a topic about, if I understand this correctly, about disaffected young men, and which is a very serious thing, don't get me wrong, but it is not something that anyone else in the Conservative caucus is talking about to the extent that he is or that I'm aware of. And this goes to the lack of discipline of messaging that the Conservatives once had. He's allowed to do this. We know we were all here the night that he won the by-election, and there was a lot of comments about how he went. He and the Ford administration went their separate ways. We know that he had quite a rant on election night. So I don't think it's insignificant. I'm also reminded from what Mel said about an interview you had with a panel of Vandana Qatar, who talked about after working for the Liberal government after Leona Alislev crossed the floor, and there was some introspection, and they asked, could we have seen this coming? Was she attending caucus, things like this? And instead, you've got these very unserious things around Secret Santa, cringeworthy conga lines. But what you were saying reminds me that there should be somebody in that caucus who was assigned to this person and should not be surprised, yet they are.
Well,
and so there is Bob Fife talked about this the other night about the MOBU, that this was a failure of House leadership. This is a failure of caucus leadership. Eventually the buck does stop with the leader, though.
Well, look, yes, but Fred, as I understand it with Michael Ma, is there were no signs of discontent, right? Like he was showing up to these things. I think that's part of why they talk about these things. I think there's kind of a glib Secret Santa, troll happening there. But, he showed up, he did these things, and there was no complaints, there was no nothing. It's not like D'Entremont, where they knew there was some scar tissue built up, right? But that aside, on the question of, is there somebody, Bob Fife talked about this last night, Joe Clark got in trouble because there was a Brian Mulroney, right? Kretchen got in trouble because there was a Martin, O'Toole because there was a Poilievre. Where is it right now?
That's it. That doesn't exist right now, which is the strange situation we're in, and what puts us in this spot where, Andrew Scheer had Aaron O'Toole breathing over his shoulder. Aaron O'Toole had Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre has taken over the party completely and has strangled it all out. There is no other person right now that is standing up and organizing in any way and looking at this. I'm not hearing anything on this. So I don't, and the caucus does, vast majority support him too, right? Like there is no breakdown there. So it puts it in a very different situation than past leaders have had. And that's one of the strengths he has, though. He has a lot of these caucus organizers and stuff with him. So he's got to find a way to turn that around and put it to good somehow with this, the caucus management or whatever these issues are. With Michael Mott, like I was talking to some friends today who had meetings with him this week on various issues. And, he was attacking Liberals and saying not very nice things about them. So it's like, this really did come out of nowhere for a lot of people. So it's really hard to manage some of that.
Well, I mean, maybe he didn't want Scheer and Workington and others coming to his office if word got out, right? Like he wanted, this is all, maybe it happened after the House rose.
Or maybe he really likes Christmas parties. He had the Conservative Party one night and he went to the Liberal Party, didn't actually mean the party itself.
True, yeah, look, I've done a few things in my day to get extra drink tickets. Floor crossing is not one of them. We got about 3 minutes left. What does this tell us about Mark Carney, Mel? And, a year ago, I remember a lot of people talking about, he's a political rookie and he's a novice. Like, he doesn't, kind of looks like a mergers and acquisitions guy right now with what's going on. I mean, what does it tell us about the way they are prepared to operate to achieve what they want to do here?
I was talking earlier that I was at an event on Wednesday night and the Prime Minister was there. Didn't love all parts of his speech, but what I found interesting about the majority of his speech is he didn't mention Liberal, I don't think, once. He kept talking about my government, and this is what we're doing, this is what the government's doing for people, etc. I feel like the more I hear him, the more he's less focused on the Liberal this, Liberal that, or Liberal versus Conservatives. He's very focused on this is what we're doing versus this is what they are talking about.
The mission.
The
He has
mission.
a mission.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that I think for regular folks watching at home, I think they find that persuasive, and that's probably what's persuasive to these MPs, particularly the MPs who have crossed over. We know them to be not necessarily Pierre Poilievre conservatives. They're probably more moderate conservatives. So I think that works well. It's also interesting because the Prime Minister has kind of also moved the party back to the middle. So when you have that more middle ground, there's obviously more openness to join and to do things with them. Yeah. So I think that's what that says about the Prime Minister, is he's somebody who is operating differently. I don't think that it always works. They haven't really passed anything this year. There's a lot of stuff at committee, but again,
one more they can pass everything.
I know. So that's right? That's maybe the motivation behind that is maybe the new year is going to be a little bit easier, and they're going to have a majority at committee. But that's what that tells me.
Greg, your quick thoughts on it?
Look, I was at the same event as Mel. It's an event designed to get more women elected, period, not partisan. Lower energy speech, but the right message, especially in terms of some of the criticisms around women in senior roles, advising him. And then last night, the Liberal Christmas Party, obviously on a bit of an up, very different, higher energy, but not necessarily like hard-edged partisan, but you also are doing really well right now and you don't have to do that. So a year ago, I was, saying I had heard that, he was kind of flat at the summer caucus in London. The guy definitely is growing into the role. I just don't know how much he loves the partisan stuff. So you just got to make sure the people that are good at that are around you doing that job.
Right. Okay. But in terms of how he's willing to operate, what he's willing to do, Fred. I mean, he seems like more of a political operator and assassin than I think people thought he might be a year ago.
Maybe, but how many bills has he passed so far in 2 sessions of Parliament? 1. So I would say I would question his skills here at getting things done until he starts doing it and still actually show us. A lot of expectations. He's getting he's getting closer and closer to that majority. But what's he accomplishing yet? Let's see what he actually gets done. And
erasing a 25-point lead and being 1 seat away from a majority feels like a lot,
Is that
politically? No, but
we're talking about his expectations to build stuff and to get stuff done.
Sure. But I mean, sorry, maybe I didn't phrase it right. Like there's your ability to get stuff through Parliament, absolutely. But just as a pure political operator, like this has been interesting. The plucking off of people, and maybe they would have had a majority by now if a few things hadn't leaked out and gone sideways. I mean, what have we learned about the way he functions in that world?
Well, I mean, you can't say anything but there is success. He's got 2 people that crossed from the official opposition to the government, and not long after an election. So there is success there. But and I understand what he's doing. By any means, get that majority government, be it an election or by floor crossers. So there is success there. How he's done it, like the D'Entremont one was incredibly sloppy, and again, I don't know what the breakdown was. If it was just crispy and a little bit too glib in the hallway with the reporter.
Maybe.
And as Greg
almost
said,
certainly
conservative at the time when he admitted that. But so look, it's hard to see exactly where this goes and what Carney will succeed. I mean, he hasn't succeeded yet in building things. He hasn't succeeded in getting legislation passed. The budget is still at second reading. You got to remember, after the session rose. So it's like he doesn't, there's nothing built yet. There's nothing done yet.
Yeah, no, look, the parliamentary stuff, definitely. There's some challenges there.
Well, committees are a challenge, and that's
a lot of it.
Minority
but anyway, it's been an interesting year to see the I remember the concerns. He's a rookie. He's never done this sort of thing. Boy, he doesn't look like he's in his first year at it. That's the way it seems as we're there. So look, as we mentioned, you can catch CBC's chief political correspondent Rosemary Barton one-on-one with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre this Sunday. That's at 10 a.m. Eastern here on CBC News Network, 11 a.m. on CBC Television. He's going to be live in studio with Rosie. We're going to say goodbye to Fred, Greg, and Mel.